Hello and welcome to Hair in the Hawthorn. My name's Kate Ray and I'm your host, and we talk about all kinds of weird things on this programme. It started off with a love of the fairies and has kind of weaved its way into all things strange. I've had some fantastic guests on and from very different perspectives, and today's guest is no exception to that very, very different perspective, and I'm hoping that he'll bring something to the table that's very different. That's what I'm hoping. I'm no stranger to this guy's work, and if you haven't come across him, I'm going to introduce him now and tell you his name. Some of you may have come across him before because I rant onto him about him wherever I go. His name's Jamie Catto, and I first came across him probably about 7 years ago, sat around a swimming pool in Turkey, started reading his book, had finished it in a day and a half, and was blown away. And I started messaging him and bugging him about things that were going off in the book. And I'm going to get him to talk to you a little bit about the book as we're going along. As with many of my guests, his bio is not a complete bio in any shape or means at all. He gives a little bit of it on his website, which is he's got a creative background, and he was in his first incarnation, I would probably say, a musician that you may know, and I'll get to talk to him about that aspect of him as well, but has moved into notions of philosophy on a sort of a spiritual platform, and probably hates the word guru, I'm sure, but definitely a spiritual teacher, and somebody who I follow for the following quote. And I think I'm paraphrasing this, about what hooked me into the book was, "There's no unicorns or bubbles here," which for me in a spiritual realm sold it. That kind of attitude had really turned me off for a long, long time. So without further ado, I would like to introduce to you Jamie Catto.
Hi,
Good evening. Good evening.
thanks
So
for having me.
to start off with, your book, Insanely Gifted, is one that if anybody speaks to me about where to start on sort of a journey of self-discovery within a spiritual way, I put them onto your book. I've bought 4 copies and had to give away 3 of them because I lamented so much about your work. Could you just explain, to start off with, the book in a roundabout nutshell way?
I'll do as quickly as I can. The reason it's called Insanely Gifted is, there's so many parts of us that we've been taught when we were little children were unwelcome. So many of the natural spectrum of being a human, not only the sort of yucky bits, like the sort of neediness and greed and selfish parts of us, but also our great excitement or our relationship with our body or sexuality or um, our ability to want to have the limelight sometimes and share our gifts. So much of that everyone's terrified of because at different times in their childhood they were shown that part of them was unwelcome or shamed. So we spent our childhood editing ourselves down smaller and smaller, just keeping the bits where everyone was treating us okay or not rejecting us or telling us off. And everybody's edited themselves down to this very tiny shop window kind of brochure of themselves, they think, and cut off a huge amount of their juicy original for fear of not being appropriate or for fear of people thinking this or people thinking that. And everyone's leading this half-life, basically, so far away from their potential, creative potential, juicy life potential, intimate potential. And it's tragic. I see it all around me, and it's heartbreaking for me. So I sort of dedicated my life to having as much of a positive impact on that as possible, and very gently, without it being a big woo-woo,
Mm.
over the top, busy being spiritual, pretentious thing, just very gently invite people tiny bit by tiny bit to pull off just some of the masks and realize that everybody's walking around with this shield or this mask, but we've all got the same thing written on the back of it.
Mm.
And I'll show you a bit of mine, you show me a bit of yours, and we kind of breathe in permission together to gradually come back into authentic connection with that. And again, it's not 0 to 100. It doesn't go from totally hidden to my brother's a drug addict. It doesn't have to go, but just a little bit more. Yeah, I feel vulnerable in the mornings too. Or yeah, I feel, just people just showing up a bit more in their vulnerability and in their humanness, fallibility, and it's what creates intimacy and what releases all the creativity and connection we want in the world. So I feel really passionate about it.
Yeah, I mean, it is very, very gentle. The book's very gentle, but it's also, it definitely gave me scope and a lot of people around me scope to delve a lot deeper, especially you talk about concepts of demons and being sort of boxed. And I think there was the analogy in there, forgive me if I'm wrong, because it's been a long time. I've got to reread your book, but it's been a long time, about sitting down and having a cup of tea with your demons and sort of getting to know them and understanding them because they are part of you. And I'm a teacher and I did a staff meeting on that particular concept, which was pretty eye-opening, I think. And it's about shadow self, isn't it? It's about working with that slightly, darker side that you don't want to touch.
Yeah, when we say demons, we don't mean the Christian idea of demons, like evil spirits, nothing at all like that. Demons are just the crazy characters in our head that are always yabbering away with their needs and their urgencies and their terrors and their strategies. It's almost like when we were little and something difficult happened and we felt, let's say, ashamed.
Mm-hmm.
Let's say you were 6 when that happened. We create a little 6-year-old version of us to hold that door shut from now on, to make sure no one ever comes through that door of shame again. And now that 6-year-old for the rest of our life is looking out of our eyes with a 6-year-old's intelligence and agenda. And anything that comes on the horizon that looks like it might possibly rattle that door, they flood our system with adrenaline and cortisol. And it's like we have these little children in us that whenever we get triggered, jump in and grab the wheel, and the lovely, wise, kind you or me falls asleep at that moment. We get like spiritual narcolepsy,
Mm-hmm.
and we vanish, and their agenda takes over. And suddenly we're speaking, we're saying things you and I would never say, writing emails you and I would never write. So yes, when those characters jump in, which I think they think they're protecting us because we gave them the job years ago to protect us, when they jump in, we normally feel shameful feelings, angry feelings, uncomfortable feelings. And because we're so comfort addictive, we don't want those. So we're always pushing those characters away, and making them unwelcome, just like we were made unwelcome. So the trick is to turn towards those characters, especially at a time when we're not triggered. It's quite difficult when you're triggered into your self-righteous, self-defensive, persecuted victim. It's quite difficult in that moment when the chemicals are going through your body to address that in a soft, lovely, cuddly way. It's a bit difficult when you're triggered. But to take a little look and wander around the garden when you're not triggered and go, oh, he's in there, she's in there. It's very, very easy actually to welcome them home and to find out their gifts, and especially find out their legitimate needs and meet those needs as an adult, because they're still living in the 80s and the 90s. They still think you're a child. They don't realize that it's 2021 and you're quite safe actually right now, and no one's going to attack you, and you've got food in the fridge, and your rock bottom is probably someone quite nice's sofa, so you're not really in massive danger. So to deliberately meet them when we're not triggered, with playfulness and humor, and realize we're all a bit crazy, we're all a bit messy, and it's all right, it's part of being a human. Instead of when you screw up going, oh, I'm such an idiot, which is what most people do, you go, oh, how human of me, did it again, and you just be really kind of sweet with yourself. And actually evolution and liberation happens a lot quicker when we're treating ourselves, stroking our inner children and going, it's all right, as you would to a child, rather than slave driving them along, which we often had as children from our parents and carers. It didn't work for us, it just screwed us up, so why are we treating those child parts of ourselves that way? It's like, let's just be a lot more sweeter. And I always say, find each one of your perceived failures more adorable than the last.
It's easier said than done, isn't it? And I think you gave me the advice a few years ago. I contacted you and said, I'm having trouble learning for the joy of learning, and when it becomes something that I have to sit down and do, my inner child just goes, no way, just get up and do something else. And it's a lovely concept, and I did sit and visualize myself at that age. It's something I think that's a work in progress, but I think that's the thing, isn't it, that all these things are a continuous work in progress, and something that you have to do on a day-to-day basis, definitely.
Yeah, I mean, it's really good to start once you've started a little bit. And as I said, it's easier said than done when you're triggered, but it is
Yeah.
actually easier done than said when you're not triggered. It's a piece of piss. totally easy when you're not triggered.
Mhm.
But once you start getting even a little bit of a handle on your inner landscape, oh, I've got this victim-y one that wants to fight everyone. Oh, I've got this one that wants to hide away and feels so ashamed. Oh, I've got, which everyone has, their kind of primary ones.
Mhm.
Once you begin to know them, then you can connect with them in the day before they start causing trouble. So you don't need to wait for them to smash the door down and create a disaster in your life or a sabotage before you give them attention. You notice them coming much, much quicker,
Mm.
especially when you practice this thing we do in the workshops, which is like so important, which we call full body listening.
Mhm.
A lot of people do not have a relationship with their feelings on the inside. They're totally externally focused,
Mhm.
controlling, strategizing, keeping it how we want it. Very few people turn inside and just go, how do I feel right now? What
Mhm.
do I need right now? And it's quite an alien concept to a lot of people.
Mm.
When you start that process off, just like every morning or every few hours in the day, just stopping for a minute, just going, how am I doing right now? Is there anything I need? Just keep checking in with that feeling inside. It gives you such a clear compass
Mm.
for what you, it's very, very easy. Like the thing about this is it's so not out of reach. It's moronically simple.
Mm.
You just have to take a couple of moments here and there. Again, it's not, you don't have to meditate for 3 hours in a cave. You just need, like, the way I do it is like I have certain points in the day, because I'm not the guy that's going to sit on a cushion at 8 o'clock in the morning and chant Vedas and stuff. I'm just not,
Mhm.
I'm never going to be that guy. So just use very everyday things. Like, one way to do it is you say, anytime I use a key, anytime I use a tap,
Mm.
or anytime I use stairs, I'm going to stop for 30 seconds and just check in how I'm doing.
Mhm.
That's it. If you just did that, stairs, keys, taps, then that's enough check-ins during the day that you now have a relationship where you're in two places at once, which the human brain can completely do. You are, of course, out here in the world with everyone, me, with you, you're here. But there's also a little part of your consciousness that is inside, knowing how you're doing. And it's a bit like when you're driving. You can be
Mhm.
chatting away with someone. There's a little part of your consciousness watching the road, left and right. You can easily maintain both at the same time. So it's just about kind of getting there early. I often say, if you really want to make progress here, you make it when you get up, when you're brushing your teeth in the morning or making your breakfast, you have a little chat with your primary characters. You go, all right, hello, murderer, how you doing there? Anyone we want to kill today? Um, you know, paranoid victim, anyone who's going to hurt us that we're suddenly imagining? What assumptions are we making today? What paranoias are going on? And you just have a little bit of a giggle with what a fucking basket case you are.
Mhm.
And then when you chat with your mates about it, you realize they go, oh, I do that too. And
Mhm.
suddenly this like really fun intimacy about let's all be loonies together, rather than, oh no, I'm fine, I really know what's going on. It's bullshit. And it's
Mhm.
so much more intimate, so much more fun, and so much more solidarity with your community to all be a bit messy together and giggle about it rather than make it a melodrama.
I had a friend who was the first copy of your book that I lost to, and when he read it, he came back to me and he said, I never realised the internal conversations that I had with people that I would make up and stress about. Usually on his journey to work, he said, I never realised I did that every single day, and that other people do that. It was suddenly this revelation that he wasn't
Yeah.
abnormal in what he was doing, and he started looking at why he was having preempting conversations at work or with people he knew and putting it into a negative context. And I think a lot of people watching this will really relate to that. I mean, especially under today's stresses with the pandemic going off, that people are in a weird headspace, aren't they, at the minute? It's a bit of
Yeah,
a bit crazy psychologically with everything's going off. So
massively.
yeah, I mean, all like I say, I'm part of the paranormal community, and they've been really good at pulling together and looking at ways of coping with stress. So this is going to be, really interesting stuff for them to sort of start digging into, as well
Yeah.
as everything else that's provided. And I
When
do
the mind
find.
does that stuff, sorry to interrupt,
No,
go
no, no,
on.
that's fine. No, that's fine. Go on.
When the mind does that stuff, like preempt and rehearse conversations going negative or other things like that, the mind, we're so used to our mind constantly churning out that kind of stuff, or giving us negative assumptions or fears or fantasies or whatever. We're so used to that constant radio station of thought, which is all those little children inside that we've told to shut that door and keep it shut. They're trying to protect us.
Mhm.
It's a constant stream of thinking. I call it head fuck FM.
Yeah,
The radio
that's good.
station never stops.
Mhm,
Now, because it's been on so long, most people think those thoughts and that stream of dialogue and that stream of thinking is who we are.
mhm,
You don't think, oh, that's my mind doing things to protect me. You just think it's you.
mhm,
You think it's my thoughts, my opinions, my strategies, my opinion. And the whole of all spiritual practices, Buddhism, Christian mysticism, all the real sort of people who are trying to become present and become free of compulsive asleep behavior, being a zombie.
mhm,
It's all about noticing that radio station and knowing it's not you, because most of the day we absolutely live 99% of the day as if that's who we are, that stream of thinking. But when you take one moment just to, like that guy did, notice himself doing that conversation, you realize, oh, there's me. And that's that mind strategy of running the conversation. Wow, I thought that was me. I'm me. And if I'm me and I can watch that conversation happen and watch myself do that, suddenly I can be free. I've got a choice. And there are so many times in the day where we will ruin great chunks of the day, start believing things that are not true, start getting paranoid, start making assumptions, start, negative or limited thinking, which we take as truth when we're not onto it. And to raise our observing ability, to witness it, and then go, oh, that bit's true, but that other bit's not true. And that bit's just my mum's voice. Don't know what she's doing in there. And you start realizing that, you can be free of that constant radio station. 99% of the people you'll meet out in the world will never even think about what we're talking about. They just think they are their thoughts. That's
mhm,
me. That's all they'll think. The keys to the prison of human suffering are noticing that, being able to watch that stream of consciousness and cherry pick which bits you're actually going to go with and
mhm,
which bits you're going to go, that just needs a cuddle, or that just needs me to calm down,
mhm,
or that's just my dad.
mhm,
Like, to know the difference between you and that stream of thinking is the difference between living as a zombie or living as a free person.
Yeah, I mean, when I have those streams of thought, and I often do catch myself having them, I say to myself, what good is this doing me right now? I'm projecting out all this negativity in myself, and my body's feeling it. I'm sensing, these conversations in every emotion, and they're not occurring in front of me. So what,
Yeah,
I question myself about what is going on here, because usually it's the coat hanger effect of, I'm feeling an emotion, I need to put it on a coat hanger.
yeah,
And that's when I start having these conversations, because I need to pin it on something. And it's really interesting to observe.
yeah,
It's almost like multiple personality disorder, isn't it? But on a really
totally.
small, gentle scale, that you sort of segmented into these personas that keep you safe and have done that job. And it's, you've got to tell
Yeah,
yourself, then, you don't need to do that job anymore. You can step
yeah,
down now. You can,
exactly.
yeah, you can step out of it.
One of the great tricks is, and this is a great, again, for your listeners, if you wanted to, explore this a little bit, one of the great turning points is to be able to be willing to feel some feelings that aren't always completely fluffy and nice.
Mhm,
Because what happens is, we're totally culturally addicted to comfort. And anytime we feel anything that isn't immediately comfortable, we're like straight to Facebook, straight to the fridge, straight to a session to get rid of it. We believe that we should never, ever feel anything except nice.
mhm,
And in that mission to only feel nice, anytime we do feel an edge or a depressed feeling or an anxious feeling, our mind leaps in to try and match that feeling to something in our life,
mhm,
so that it thinks, if I can solve that thing in my life, that feeling will go away,
mhm,
because the mind is just geared towards making it go away, making it go away. So it will invent something that matches that feeling rather than just feeling the feeling. So you wake up in the morning a bit blue, and then you think to yourself, oh, my relationship's got a problem,
mhm,
or something like that. And then you start head fucking about your relationship. And then you have a conversation with your partner and you start a whole problem that wasn't really a problem. It was just that you didn't want to feel that blue feeling. And the blue feeling might have had nothing to do with the relationship. But when you thought about the relationship and then you felt the blue feeling again, now you've made a connection that they're the same thing, and they're not. But if you're a human that can say, I am willing to feel some of my edgy feelings, then all it is really is your body doing a little bit of emotional shit, basically. It's got
mhm,
an accumulation of all the suppressed anger, all the suppressed tears, all the suppressed anxieties that we were talked out of when we were young. And because it's got this great, what Eckhart Tolle in the brilliant book, The Power of Now, he calls it the pain body, all the accumulation of all the feelings you've not processed. The body wakes up in the morning and it knows it's got this great big lump of constipated emotional poo and it wants to shit some of it out. So that's all it's doing, and it feels a bit edgy. There's nothing to do with your relationship or your bank account or COVID or anything. It's just your body going.
Yeah.
Now, if you put your hand up and say, I'm willing to feel some of my uncomfortable feelings and be a willing participant in my body's genius self-plumbing system, then your emotional plumbing can just carry on doing it, and you go, oh, that feels a bit yucky. But you don't go to your bank account, your relationship, and just go, oh, and you just be inside, rub the chest a bit, go, oh. And then 5 minutes later, it's done what it needs to do. You can jump up and get on with your day. So to catch your mind before it tries to save you from feeling, you first have to be willing to feel. If you're someone that says, no, I'm not willing to feel any of those feelings, you're always going to be the mercy of your mind.
Where do you stand on the ideas of actually picking up emotions and feelings energetically from other people, say? Is that something that
the way I see it, and I'm not saying I'm right, but the way I experience it is there is depression, there is sadness. It is a plane, a frequency of existence of being a human. There is anger, there is paranoia, there is all these things. And we all have a little flame of each of those in us. And if I'm near you and your paranoid flame is burning brightly today, it will, because of morphic resonance, everything has a similar frequency. Dr. Rupert Sheldrake calls it morphic resonance, when we have the same frequencies of things. So when your paranoid flame is burning higher, when I'm near you, my one starts burning higher too. A bit like if you get two violins in a room and you strike a chord on one of them, the same note on the other violin will start sounding because that frequency will pass between them. So it's not so much as picking it up from other people. It's just that being near you when your one is burning brighter makes my one burn brighter, because we all have the potential to go there. We all have paranoia. We all have anger. We all have neediness. We all have joy. So when I'm being joyful, you're not picking up joy from me. You've already got plenty of joy in you. It's just yours burns a bit brighter when it's near my joy. So, we will just make it more likely that the other person's version of that will burn brighter around us. That's kind of how I see it.
Definitely. I saw something just a couple of days ago, very simple experiment where somebody had two tuning forks and they hit one and the other one started vibrating. They were sort of about that far apart, and it was just a lovely example of just what you've been saying in in the scientific material realm, really. You talked about
we all have to accept that part of being a human means there is sadness. And there's a beautiful Tibetan Buddhist meditation called Tonglen, where they do like the kinds of things we've been talking about today, just breathing with it and just being with it and welcoming it, rather than, oh, no, like, okay, I can be with that, hello, and then let it do its process. But they take it a step further and they say, may me doing that help everyone else who's doing that. So when I feel sad, rather than over personalizing it and making it into Jamie's big melodrama of my sadness and my demons and my depression, sometimes, if I can remember, I think, and I write this in the book, there's a guy setting up his fruit stand in Peru right now who's feeling just like this. There's a woman walking her dog in Paris who's feeling just like this. There's a kid lying awake in bed in Los Angeles who's feeling just like this. There is this sadness, and we all dip in and out of it. It's not mine or yours or theirs. It just is. And as a human, we have the potential to dip in and out of it. And it's quite helpful to not over personalize it and just make it part of being a human.
Definitely. I often ask, is that my energy that I'm experiencing? And sort of, literally just very briefly say, if it isn't, then can we go away, because I've got my own to deal with. I think a lot of people in the paranormal community very much understand sort of the resonancy and frequencies of energies, and I mean, that's something that I wanted to talk to you about.
I'm in it. Let's have it.
Let's have it. So you spoke briefly back then about sort of different realms, different planes, whatever you want to call them. What are they to you? Where are you at with, because we have this 3D reality, we have a material reality. where do you actually go to personally with your ideas of other realms, other realities, and how are they constructed for you?
Okay, so one way to look at it is we're humans. We are in a lovely fleshy body on this plane of Earth, right?
Mm-hmm.
But when you look at through your human eyes, you realize that our perception, our experience of anything that we experience is very, very limited.
Mm-hmm.
You know, we can't see infrared, we can't see ultraviolet. We can only see a very narrow bandwidth of optical frequency. There are many, many more frequencies outside of what you and I, the same with sound. We
Mm-hmm.
can't hear the high frequencies that dogs can hear or the low decibels of the pulse of the core of the earth. Humans are like a tandy, quite cheapo plastic radio set that it's got quite limited bandwidth on what it can pick up optically, orally, and probably emotionally. Like we're in a very limited human body. So to imagine that just because my receiver, my
Mm-hmm.
human body with my eyes and my ears and everything, taste, can only do that bandwidth, to imagine that just because I can only do that bandwidth, that's all that exists, is a bit of a arrogant leap.
Mm-hmm.
That just because my crappy radio thing can only pick up things in 1.5 mile, that all there is 1.5 mile. No,
Mm-hmm.
there's a lot more than all that. It's just that my receiver can only pick up that much. So I don't doubt for a moment that other dimensions, and I don't mean dimensions in a wacky way, it's just things outside of my crappy plastic tandy radio
Mm-hmm.
set, which is my body, that of course there are radio stations beyond my aerial
Mm-hmm.
that I'm not picking up. I just don't have satellite yet, or I don't have, like right now in your room and in my room and in the room of anybody listening to this, there is American football going through the room. There's Luxembourg radio going through the room. There's Dubai news broadcast going in the room. And if you had a satellite dish set up in your room and turned on a screen, there they would be. They're all in the room. You just don't have the receiver right now that's picking them up and putting them on a screen. But they are all around us right now being transmitted. So that's kind of a long way to say that, until we, for example, there are certain substances on this planet. Here's a good example of, like, I'm listening to this absolutely wonderful book at the moment that I think everyone should read by, actually funny, we mentioned Dr. Rupert Sheldrake.
Mm-hmm.
His son, Merlin Sheldrake, has written a book called Entangled Life, which is all about fungus
Ah,
and
yes.
all its incredible uses medicinally, recycling plastic, eating things, that it's the first ancestor, and we are a lot closer to fungus than we are to plants.
Mm-hmm.
And it talks through us, and the way he describes it is so lyrical but also very scientific. It's incredible. It's the most brilliant layman's book. It's brilliant. No wonder Sunday Times made it one of their picks of the year. It's extraordinary. Everyone should read Entangled Life. And so when we take a certain mushroom, suddenly you can see the fairies.
Mm-hmm.
It's not like the mushrooms made them there. They were there all the time, but there are certain substances like psilocybin and things which remove the veil or expand our radio set aerial
Mm-hmm.
to be able to pick up more. And then it wears off and we go back to our normal everyday reality. But there are certain substances you can take that broaden our spectrum of what we can perceive and pick up. Magic mushrooms are a perfect example. Anyone that's here that's taken magic mushrooms, you can see things and perceive things when you're on a mushroom trip that you can't in your everyday. It's not that they weren't there. It's just that drug removed the limiting cap from that particular part of your perception. And it's a great example for, like, we talk about the elementals.
Mm-hmm.
I think mushrooms are a substance which allow the humans who can't ordinarily connect that, unless they're a particularly sensitive person,
Mm-hmm.
they don't usually have that channel switched on. It switches on that channel for 4 hours, and you get a little preview. And I think, probably the medicines like ayahuasca, even though I've never taken it, and I'd probably be, having had such a long history of panic attacks, I would probably not take ayahuasca. I probably wouldn't dare. But I bet you that if I did dare, that opens up a different channel to the great mother, grandmother of wisdom. That so you know, like, so you talk about other dimensions. I think they're always there, and that there are routes, whether it be through meditation, through eating mushrooms, other substances, licking a certain frog on a full moon. I don't know, that there are ways for the human body to perceive them. And there are probably many, many more angelic realms. And, you know, like, I know certain people who are healers, and they're a real pain in the ass in the everyday world, these people. Like, you don't want to marry one. You know, they're always like really untogether on the material plane. They're always late. They're always fucked up with their finances, and they're just like a nightmare to deal with. But when you need some angelic help, that's who you go to. And it's almost like that you and me are here, and they're sort of there, and they can't quite ground themselves in what you and I would consider reality, but they have access to things in their everyday that you and I would need a mushroom for. And there are other people who are even more entrenched, you know, more like political bankers, people who are really invested in only the material plane, and they're not creative, and they don't read books, and they're just about. And they're who you want when your kitchen floods, or when, you know, like when there's bombs dropping or shit. You need the soldiers and the people who are really on the material plane, and they don't care about the spiritual stuff. They're just about, we need to build 4 walls and rebuild this city. You know, like, I'm not saying those people can't be spiritual. I'm just saying that there are different people who are appropriate to being where they are, and there's no judgment about that. So yeah, like, you know, great example, fairies. When the guy who accidentally invented the X-ray machine, that's the X-ray machine is almost like looking through eyes we couldn't look through before. You couldn't look at the human skeleton before, but you can now with an X-ray machine. There's another dimension opened up through that machine. It's another tool. Like, he's expanded his Tandy radio station. And the guy that invented the X-ray machine, I think it was a man, it might have been a woman, I hope so, I'm not being sexist, was trying to make a camera to photograph fairies, and in a way did. It's like, children already have much more of that open, and it's only their life of being parenting over, oh, those aren't real, Father Christmas isn't real, fairies aren't real, so they believe the adults, and they shut down that part of their radio set. But they could see them perfectly well when they were little, because no one told them they weren't there. So yeah, I believe they're all around us, and the same with gods and goddesses. And, you know, I've had amazing help from the gods and the goddesses on the paranormal realms. You know, they happen to wear the costumes of Hindu gods and goddesses often, because they're represented so beautifully there. It's easy to get a link, because they have, you know, Lakshmi in her abundance, or Ganesh removing obstacles, or, you know, like, because there is a fixed personality and an image, it's easier to connect with them. But I don't think it has to be done that way in any way at all. You know, you can just look at a candle flame. If you're open to it and you want to connect, they're waiting to be asked. But they have to be asked. You know, they're not going to come and get involved with your life unless you call them in.
Do you think that we perceive them in a way that we can understand them in the full form, and that's, it is just about an energy, and it's our perception of them that come in the different guises of gods and goddesses, that we recognise them? I've got to go back just to when you were talking about mushrooms, because it's something that really excites me. I've become an avid forager over the last couple of years, and mushrooms are my biggie. Absolute obsession with mushrooms, and
I love them too. Like, I'm always on the lookout now when I go for a walk. Not because I want to pick them or anything, just because I feel like they're my family.
Yeah, definitely. This last year has been probably the most magical and in touch that I've ever been with the earth, just foraging for mushrooms. And I get so excited, honestly. The variety that it's just been huge. But I've been asked.
My new shirt while you're talking about that.
So I've been asked quite a lot about gateways and sort of how people see fairies. Oh, that's so good.
You did my new shirt.
That is so nice. I am so jealous. And one of the things I mean, I have been looking into you know, the ancestry connection with mushrooms. I'm a bit terrified of that kind of side of things these
Okay.
days. I'm sorry, Mum, I'm going to have to say this. Have been dabbling with small quantities of fly agaric. Nothing to take you out of your brain space. I'm not dead yet, and I don't recommend it to anybody who doesn't know what they're doing. But that's something that I want to build up. What I do say to people first and foremost is, though, these for me are easy access, the quick access into these realms, but actually putting in the hard work, doing the meditation, going out into nature, there is absolutely nothing that can fill that void of putting in the hard graft of connecting, you know, with these different realms on a human level. But I've got nothing against, you know, sort of having those keys, quick access. I have known people who've done ayahuasca, not for me either. I think you know, the stories they
I wish
tell.
I had the courage.
Yeah, definitely. But
I wish I had, because I'm sure I get a lot out of it. You know, I have a lot
yeah.
of anxiety and depression, and I'm pretty sure. Like, one thing about mushrooms, I mean, there's so many amazing facts about mushrooms, and I'm probably telling you things you already know. But he talks about many things in the Entangled Life, like the mycelium network, which is the tendrils under the ground with which the mushrooms communicate with each other,
Mm-hmm.
operate like the neuro connections of our brain. And all the trees use the links of the mycelium network to talk to each other. There's a
I know.
constant network of electrical impulses under the ground talking to each other. And did you know, this is a beautiful thing that Rupert Sheldrake talks about it, that mummy trees stay more in contact with their baby trees where the acorn
Oh.
came from their actual tree than from other trees. So when a new acorn is growing into a new tree, the tree that acorn came from, which is its mummy tree, is constantly in contact with the sapling while it's growing. So mummy trees take care of their baby trees, even though they're not geographically, and they're connected by the mycelium network. So that's why I've started taking these drops. My ex-wife has a health food shop in Oxford, and
So what's the drop? Is that a cordyceps or?
it's an elixir of magic mushroom drops.
Oh wow. Okay.
And they don't make you trip. They don't
Yeah.
alter your
Yeah.
consciousness at all. You take 6 drops a few times a week, and I'm with it. I'm trying to rebuild my own mycelium network in my
Mm-hmm.
brain to repair some of the broken connections from decades of panic attacks, so that I'm not so trauma reactive, and that I'm rebuilding pathways which feel a bit more grounded rather than reactive and broken and
Mm-hmm.
traumatized.
Yeah, I have been reading a lot about, you know, small dosage of things, and there's some amazing YouTube and scientific evidence about, you know, helping with anxiety, etc. So it's not just I think one of the stigmas is that you know, that it has this reputation of being sort of a party thing, you know, that it isn't taken seriously. But actually, when you look into things like mushrooms and ayahuasca, especially the history of it, it's just absolutely fascinating stuff. Really, really fascinating stuff, and used shamanically the world over. These things, you know, it's. You wonder whether it was the legalities around it were stopped because of what it opens your mind to. But
Of course, of course. I mean, this whole, you know, let's not get started about this lockdown. I
I know,
mean,
I
something
know.
where 99.99% of people survive has stopped the whole, we've got everyone to stay at home. You can't fly anywhere. You can't go anywhere. You can't go to your grandfather's funeral. You can't,
Mm-hmm.
you know, like my girlfriend is in Australia and they're not letting anyone in or anyone
No.
out. So we haven't seen each other since July. And, you know, it's a real pressure to, is this going to, you know, how long do we leave it
Mm,
before we just have to go, have to let go? You know, it's my daily fear
mm-hmm.
that, you know, are we going to be able to see each other in time
It's
to
having
not,
massive detrimental
yeah, the
health. Oh,
depression,
yeah.
things are going through the roof, the domestic abuse. You know, I work with a lot of people in social work.
Mm-hmm.
I support people who are in various areas of that, and it's a terrible thing that one of them said to me this week. She said, it's never been a better time to abuse a child.
I know.
You know, because there's no one, they're not going to school, so no one's seeing the bruises.
Yeah, I know.
The domestic abuse is gone through the roof. It's not being talked about enough. the mental health through the roof, the suicide rates through the roof. For what?
Hmm.
For
I know.
what exactly? You
I
know,
know. I mean,
um,
I've definitely
and the
shifted up.
people are so obedient. It's harrowing.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, anybody who knows me from Facebook will know. I mean, I've recently taken a massive shift. I was on a huge roller coaster with all of this, and just couldn't believe it. Just couldn't get over. You know, I don't want to get into my political side of things because it has led to a great deal of grief for me.
Yeah,
I'm actually having to shift myself back into the space of what can we do? How can we move forward? How can
yeah,
we help each other out? Because I think without that right now, you know, that without that, how do we help people? Um, it's difficult. It's really tricky agenda, really tricky agenda. And I know that a lot of people feel very alone, and a lot of people feel very lost. Um, it's not good. It's really not good.
I know.
And
And I
that's
don't know if we can get the numbers. You know, if everyone just opened up their shops en masse and said, "I'm
mhm,
sorry, no," it would be unenforceable.
yeah. But
But
people are
it
living
doesn't.
in a massive state of fear, aren't they? And that's a huge driver.
I know.
And
No,
it's,
I'm not saying that. I'm not saying it's
I
likely
know,
to happen. You know,
I
I
know.
don't know what to do about it. And I also wouldn't want to be the person that got that wrong.
Hmm. Yeah.
Um, but it seems to be that the knock-on effects of the lockdown, people losing their businesses, depression, domestic abuse, mental health, suicide, and many other things,
Hmm.
are outweighing, you know, a certain amount of people dying. Not that I want to say, oh, fuck you if you're over
Yeah.
65, that's your problem, you know. But you could easily do it with the same amount of billions and trillions that's being lost.
Hmm.
They could kind of set up little villages for the people who are high risk
Hmm.
and let them have a lockdown if they choose it,
Hmm.
and have it hermetically sealed and bring in the food with masks and rubber gloves, and
Hmm.
easily the amount of money being lost could serve those people while everybody else gets it, has flu symptoms and gets over it. Like 99.9%, it even says on the NHS website,
No.
it can, for most people, it can be dealt with over the counter medicines. So let for 99% of people carry on with their lives and have over the counter medicines. And for the people that are higher risk, let's make lovely little villages so, you know, they can be served and looked after, so that let 10% of people have lockdown if they want it, and 90%
Hmm.
of people get on with their lives. And I don't quite understand, like, if quarantine and everything else, why can't you fly to certain places if you're willing to do 2 weeks quarantine? Like,
Hmm.
why? And it does make my kind of, like, I just hope that it's not nanites in the vaccines that are gonna, like, I was arguing against it. Someone else was, my girlfriend actually was arguing with me, you know, about this. She'd seen Dr. Christina Northrup's video, who's someone
Hmm.
we actually really respect, um, who said that, you know, these vaccines are going to put nanites, these little tiny
Hmm.
mini robots that can measure your heart rate. And I was saying to her, really, do you really think that this vaccine has tiny robots in it that are not only self-powered, but they've got enough RAM, enough memory in them to be able to constantly monitor your heart rate and where you are geographically and what your internet browser history is doing it, and enough power to transmit that information to some huge computer? And that computer has got the RAM to on a day-to-day basis process 7 billion people's worth of data. You really think that's in a vaccine? I don't. And
Hmm.
it does seem a bit far-fetched that could be the case, you know.
Hmm.
But, you know, a lot of people believe it.
They do, and
But
it kind of takes away credence to the things that from the beginning people were saying were going to happen and predicting were going to happen, that were labelled by a lot of people and disrespected by a lot of people for their thinking,
yeah,
and
like David Icke.
yeah, and things that came true, and when it gets to extreme ends that you know are on the parameters of belief, it does sort of it puts a
The
shade
baby goes
really.
out with bathwater.
Exactly. I tell you, one of the things though about I have really noticed about lockdown, especially the first lockdown that we had, was this real desire for magic and for enchantment and play in people's lives. I saw a raise in things like, and I've spoke about this before, about people putting fairy doors in forests and woods, and sort of parks and things like that, and it was almost like a really unconscious move. You know, there was no signs anywhere saying please leave things for the fairies, or, you know, there's a treasure hunt going off. It just, these things spontaneously happened. You know, people had this, I think that fear was kind of generating as well this need for something outside the material realm to sort of grasp onto. And we have
Mm-hmm.
seen that historically before, you know, with wars, etc., and the rise of spiritualism and so forth. What have you sort of recognized any of the sort of the positive aspects that have come out of this, with people maybe pursuing more spiritual aspects of things? Or
I would be, you know, I mean, I'd be slightly reaching, but one thing which is an example of it, it's a bit like, you know, blind people,
mm-hmm,
because they've had their vision taken away, other senses become incredibly sensitive, their touch, their sense of space, their hearing.
mm-hmm,
That's why, you know, when you get a piano tuner around, they're nearly always blind,
mm-hmm,
um, because they've got this incredible extra sensitivity. So, you know, when you reduce one faculty, another one comes bigger.
mm-hmm.
Um, so when lockdown began last March, I noticed a lot of people that were feeling disconnected, people
Yeah.
who couldn't go to their yoga class or cafe or job or pub. So I said, look, I'll open up my Zoom for anyone that just wants to come and hang out and just have a bit of human connection. And we called it the Lovely Gathering.
Mm-hmm.
And like 180 people came and all shared their stories and their challenges and their happinesses and their songs and their poems. And I've been running it now twice a week since then.
Mm-hmm.
And I have like 100 people twice a week come to the Lovely Gathering. It's free and it's just sweet. And it's a lovely community of people just sharing what's true for them.
Mm-hmm.
And you're right. I mean, sometimes, you know, I've noticed that, you know, we've had to draw upon resilience and connecting with each other in a more conscious way, in ways that we took for granted before, because we could just walk down the street and go to the cafe or the yoga. And now that that's been taken away, we have to kind of work harder to connect. We have to show up
Mm-hmm.
and do it more deliberately.
Mm-hmm.
So that's kind of a good thing, that it's made us work our muscle of realizing how important connection is, and us showing up for connection rather than just it being served to us on a plate because of
Mm-hmm.
the places we usually go. So I think that's good. And another thing that was good, and I haven't heard as much talk of it recently, but I think it's there. But it was very, very evident right at the beginning, was because suddenly there's no airplanes going, and there's no,
Mm.
that everyone was saying, oh, the owls have come back to our
Yes.
woods, or the trout have come back to our rivers, or that wildlife and nature has had a bit of a breather from the human industrial machine.
Mm-hmm.
And it's been quite good for nature, the lockdown, because there's much less consumption, much less machines and cars and airplanes belching, toxicity into the atmosphere. There's much less people dragging things out of the ground, so much less noise. So I think it's been quite good for nature. I think it's quite good for the squirrels and the ferrets.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I've had some amazing experiences, sort of just walking that I wouldn't have had at any other point. And I've often asked myself whether it is not just the fact that there's no cars on the road, or there's less cars on the road and there's less airplanes, etc. But there's almost something, there was something, especially in the spring last year, where the animals seemed to have no fear of, you'd be walking along and a few meters away you'd have a deer that wouldn't bolt when it recognized that you were there. Or I've had hares running across within meters in front of me. It was amazing. And I think for me, part of that was I was yearning for that. I was really yearning for, that kind of, the earth is still here, nature's still here, we're still here, let's find something wholesome with the crap that's going on. And it was about digging deep. I know we've kind of gone off piece, and I absolutely love that, Jamie, and I do want to talk to you afterwards about some stuff about what's going off. Getting it back on track, there is one question that I ask all my guests, and it can be absolutely anything. What has been your strangest or weirdest experience that's been outside your comprehension as a human being?
I can think of a couple. The first one I would say is, and they actually may be quite connected. The first one I would say is my relationship with the goddess Lakshmi.
Mm-hmm.
That she seems to be around. Like, I feel a real actual connection, and she talks enough. She takes the piss out of me, and we dance in the car. And because gods and goddesses, they don't have taste buds, they don't have human bodies.
Mm-hmm.
So if you want to connect with a god or a goddess, one great way to do it is get some really nice high quality chocolate. And you say, here, come here, check this out. And then you put the chocolate in your mouth and you give the taste to them. So you go, taste this, and you put it in your mouth and you transmit the lovely chocolatey taste to Lakshmi. And she goes, oh my fucking God, why don't more humans do this? And that's like making an offering in a way. It's like you're lending them your human faculties so that they can have. So there's that. But I think, and this is probably a bit boring really, I mean, I don't know if this even counts, but like just the fact that I get to live with enough food in the fridge and enough petrol in the car, being healthy, the kids are healthy, not having to have a job other than helping people, and you know, ideas out of my head, films, music, but you know, just generally doing what I would do anyway. And yet I get to live a comfortable life in a warm place with a soft bed and a fridge, and is a miracle. You know, I don't know, and maybe it could also be, of course, my white male privilege, of course, probably comes into it. But just like it's a miracle that I've got a room with books and food in the fridge and children, and the material plane sort of ticks along. I mean, I'm not buying Ferraris or Armani suits or anything, but like, you know, just like the basics of life is such a mystical luxury to me. I'm so amazed by it every day. I'm amazed that when it comes to the sort of basics of life, I'm really looked after, you know, without having to sort of, you know, go and work in a bank or a warehouse or something. Like, that is the most extraordinary, daily awestruck, almost confused, like how, like amazement of my life, and gratitude, of course. Yeah, I'm just amazed that it all carries on. I don't know, there's, you know, who's doing this, you know, like, I'm just amazed by it.
And it is, and there's so many people that I speak to, and I do speak quite a lot to people about living in gratitude, and how it was a concept for many, many years for me, and didn't really know how to do it. And I thought I knew how to do it. And it is that amazement, and it's that feeling within the, you know, your energy centers, that I am super grateful. I am excited with the gratitude that I have for the.
When we were young, we were taught to be grateful in a kind of like a shaming way. Say thank you to your grandmother. So like, it's sort of, gratitude feels like
it's dirty. Yeah, it feels like it's dirty, doesn't it?
You don't do it. If gratitude feels like it's dirty if you don't do it. It's like it's something that you're a naughty girl if you won't do it. So it's like an enforced penance or something. Gratitude means you should feel slightly bad and ashamed. That because everyone said you should feel grateful, you know, the things you've got in your life, there's sort of shame all wound into gratitude at the moment, that you should be ashamed for having the good things. I'm amazed when I see on Facebook people say, you know, here is the gratitude challenge, we're going to do a gratitude every day. It's like, really, you need reminding? Just look around. Like, just imagine, like, sometimes I'm driving along between like giving a talk or whatever, and it's like a 2-hour drive home or something, right? and I'm an hour into the drive, driving along some road that I don't know. Where am I? Somewhere near Amersham or something,
Mm-hmm.
like just some random place. And I think, if I didn't have this car, I would just be standing by this concrete bit of road right now with no way to get home. It's raining, miles, 50 miles from where I need to be. Like, what the fuck would I do?
Mm-hmm.
I just take it for granted that I've got this thing with this incredible ergonomically designed seat and a machine. Somebody invented that, and somebody invented the metal casing for it, and someone went to college and learned about the wiring that makes the speakers play me music, and the people playing that music all practiced every day on their. For you just to have a simple drive home, you are taking advantage of all the practicing the musicians who played that music you're listening to did for decades, all the studio technology that somebody invented and went to university to learn how physics worked to put a studio and record sound and all that stuff, all the technology behind the seat you're sitting in and the special foam sponge that's inside the seat that breathes and allows it not to stink after you use the car for years, whatever.
Mm-hmm.
All the fucking people that over years studied and invented things so that the carburetor could work, and the fuel injection system, and the lights on the dashboard, and the wiring, and the tracks that the seat can slide back and forth so it's exactly the right distance from the steering wheel for you, and the springs in the pedals of the bloody thing, and the glass, and the thing that doesn't shatter and cut you if it breaks. It's a special kind of glass, and the heating system, and the tarmac on the road, and I mean, I could literally just carry on going
Mm-hmm.
for hours on all those people that learnt all those things and studied all that thing and then came up with the inspiration to invent it and put it all together, all so that you could enjoy all those things on a drive home. There's probably like 10,000 people's worth of knowledge and application that goes into you just getting home safely listening to Katie Tunstall. So, like, if you really be where you are and really look at what you just don't take it for granted just for a minute, just really look at, like, the technology that even goes into your bedroom,
Mm-hmm.
the amount of things, it's like, it is quite awe-inspiring. It's quite awe-striking.
It is, and we do take things so for granted, and it does come back to me about bringing yourself back into the now, doesn't it? When you look at an object, a very simple object that you own, and think about the history that sort of brought it into its existence. It's the journey of just one very, very simple object, like a cup, like a teacup.
Yeah.
It can it's a humbling experience, but it also kind of grounds you in that moment of considering something and looking at it very, very differently.
And I think we expect things to be much too cheap. It's just like,
Yeah,
like a
definitely.
teacup. So, well, I'm not paying 10 quid for that. It's
Yeah.
like, well, 10 quid, like somebody fucking sat down, clay potted it, put the handle on, did it perfectly, made sure it bonded, fired it, painted it, glazed it, did what they were like. 10 quid, like that's like half an hour of your life. What,
Mm.
what is the problem,
Yeah, I mean, I hope that,
£1 for a song on iTunes. Do you know
yeah,
what went into that song? Of all the backing vocalists and the bass guitar, like, well, I don't need to list all the things again, like I just did endlessly.
I mean, I do hope that
You won't have a problem paying £1 for that.
I know. I do hope that one thing that comes out of the state of play that we're in at the moment is that that people will start appreciating things more, for a start, but secondly start appreciating those who make things and make things. I mean, I've been talking over the last couple of days with various people about when we put intent into what we're making, even if it's a simple meal, it tastes so different. It's that whole, a sandwich that somebody else has made always tastes better than you could make it yourself, and it's that kind of that love and that energy that goes into something.
Yeah,
And
like I've got the chopping machine, which is actually really cool. It's a string. You pull the string and the blade spins and it chops it all up. It's kind of cool. My mum got it for me. But I've kind of realized that I prefer chopping it all by hand and doing it. I just don't know why. I just like, I don't want to do the quick vroom, vroom, vroom. I want to cut the carrot into little bits. I want to, yeah.
It's
Listen, I've
amazing.
got 3 minutes left before I'm
Yes,
needed
you have.
elsewhere.
And I can you just plug your workshops very, very quickly. Where can people find you? That's the most
Very
important
easy,
thing.
myname.com, jamiecatto.com or jamiecatto.com/workshops.
Mm-hmm.
But if you go to jamiecatto.com, there's workshops, there's events, there's the free gathering twice a week. It's easy to find. Find me on Facebook and Instagram for the link for that. There's music on the website. There's links to the One Giant Leap movies, my new movie, Becoming Nobody, which is my tribute to Ram Dass, the wonderful spiritual teacher and sacred clown. I'm easy to find, jamiecatto.com or Jamie Catto on Facebook and Instagram. Very easy to find.
Yeah, I'll drop a link down below, definitely. Please stay on. I just want to have a quick chat with you. Round it up. Thank you so much. I don't know where the time's gone. It's absolutely flown by. I genuinely thought we'd been on for about 25 minutes then, so that's brilliant. So thank you very much, Jamie. It's been an absolute pleasure.
Thanks for having me. May the fairies be with you.
And you, definitely.